In 2009, all of New Mexico watched in horror as investigators unearthed the remains of 11 women and one unborn child from Albuquerque's West Mesa. The murders are unsolved and the subject of a new podcast produced by a local journalist who found herself captivated by the case. NMIF producer Matt Grubbs asked Tierna Unruh Enos into the studio this week to talk about the Mesa and what she hopes the impact of her effort will be.
This past weekend marked 11 years since those bodies were discovered. Why now, I guess, is the question. What got you interested in this?
So I worked in television in 2009 here locally when they were finding the bones and the remains of all the women. So I had already worked in media. I knew the story really well. And then 10 years goes by. I've still worked in media, and you always hear a little bit about it, and every once in a while read up more. Has anything happened? And it has just always stuck in the back of my mind. And the 10-year anniversary was last year, and I thought, I need to do something more on this. And I am a huge fan of podcasts. And I thought this is a perfect subject for a podcast. Could really delve into it more, spend more time on it, do things that you can't really do in traditional media when you only have a 2-3 minute window to do some sort of coverage, something beyond just we don't have any suspects. And so that was really my goal. And so I thought, I'm going to do a podcast. I started doing investigation about a year ago, interviewing, doing a lot of research, and building up to being able to launch on the anniversary, which is February 2nd.
Sure. And that's oftentimes what we see, especially as something gets further and further out. We see the anniversary stories, things like that. So you start to dig into this about a year ago, and you focus, I would assume, on these two people that have been looked at for a long time.
Yeah.
What is it about those two people? I guess first explain who they are, and what is it about them that attracted the interest of the police?
So the two persons of interest, which is a very important distinction, not suspects, they've never been named suspects, are Joseph Blea, who is still alive, and he's in jail right now for quite a long time, not for anything related with this case, for rape charges and a number of other things that have nothing to do with this case. And then Lorenzo Montoya. Lorenzo Montoya is now deceased. He was killed in 2006 when he had killed Sharika Hill, who was an exotic dancer, call girl, and he had hired her to come to his house. Her boyfriend at the time couldn't get a hold of her, and so came to the house and was looking for her, saw Lorenzo coming down the stairs, had the body thrown over his shoulder, and had a gun.
Wow.
And so pointed it at him. Boyfriend kills Lorenzo. So that, for Lorenzo, that's the connection there, is that here he's sort of shown he's done it now once.
Right.
Quite possibly, could he have done it again? Yes. There's a number of other things. He lived within line of sight at the time of where the bodies were found, or the bones were found, about 3 miles roughly from the burial site. And in 2006, there wasn't nearly the amount of development out there that there is now.
Or even that there was in 2009 when they found those bodies.
Absolutely, totally. And really that area, anyone who goes out to the west side now, it's all residential housing and different areas out there. That area in 2009 had sort of come to a standstill in terms of construction. That area where they were found, that land is owned by KB Homes, and was owned by KB Homes back then in 2009. And 2008, 2009 was when the economic crash happened, construction halts. So there's a lot of new housing, and then places that are slated for housing. And the bones were found in an area like that was slated for housing, but the construction had just stopped. So Lorenzo lived within line of sight of that. So there's a number of things that are connections there, but have never really come to fruition in terms of enough evidence to be able to even posthumously charge him.
Sure.
Joseph Blea, same thing. There's a few connections. He had a landscaping company, and a tree tag had been found in the dig site from his company. He says he used to dump trash and waste out on the mesa all the time, which again is not unheard of. People do that everywhere on the mesa. People
Right.
dump animal carcasses, trash, debris, tires. You can find all that kind of stuff out there. So again, that's not necessarily evidence that he did it. So it's never really moved beyond persons of interest for either one of those. And there's been a few other persons of interest that fell off right away towards the beginning. And after that, there really haven't been any suspects named.
And one of the difficulties there is that one of the people, they didn't even realize there was a crime
Yeah.
until 3 years after he died.
Yes.
And so, how do you investigate that? So, you start digging into this, and you decide that there's enough for a podcast,
Yeah.
and that you want to do this. Who have you spoken to? And I guess, what do those interviews look like? What will we hear?
So I definitely have spoken to APD, more long format beyond just, do you have any suspects? Okay, great. Talk to them for a long time. What's the difference between persons of interest and suspect? Are you still getting tips? Who's still working on this? How do you feel about this case? What are new advancements in the ways that you are investigating this now? Talk to Safe Street New Mexico. It's an organization that was started after the bones were found. And they really work with women, specifically women who are on the street and are more vulnerable population. They're not there to, get them off the street. They are there to provide any kind of support so that women feel like there's a place that they can come to and talk to them if there's someone out that they're afraid of. It's basically a safe haven for women who are on the street. And so that's really important because at that time, this didn't exist. And maybe if it had, who knows, things could have been a little bit different.
You said that there was sort of a word of mouth network, but it was
Yeah.
very, very informal.
Yeah, I mean, it still is. There is
Okay.
a word of mouth network now, but at least there is a place that they work really, really hard to make sure these women know if you feel threatened, if somebody is out there doing something and you hear a rumor or something has happened to you, you can come talk to us. Part of the problem, and the police absolutely admit this, is that a lot of these women who are on the streets or maybe even tangentially on the streets and are in that vulnerable population feel that they can't go to the police if they are threatened or if something has happened. They feel like either no one's going to listen to them or they're going to get in trouble. And so they don't say anything. And she wants to provide, Christine Barber, she wants to provide a safe place so that the women can come and say, and you're not going to get in trouble. And then they will go and make the determination, do we have enough? Can we go to law enforcement? Can we go to other organizations? They put out a list called the Bad Guy List, and they try to circulate flyers every month. Car, make and model, what does the guy look like? Be on the lookout, things like that. They post it on their website every month. They hand it out to all the women on the street so that people can be more than just, word of mouth. Have talked to reporters from 2007, 2009, who knew that there was, before the bones were found, there was a list of women that at least some people were looking at, saying like, hey, this isn't normal.
Some people in law enforcement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And there was one detective in particular in 2007, Ida Lopez. She had a list, and she called them My Girls. And it was about 16, 17 women that she knew were missing, and she was looking for them. I don't think she really thought it was going to be what it is. And she is still on contract with APD on the 118th Street Task Force, that is the group that is still investigating this. So she's still on contract, but originally she was the one who noticed and was actively looking for these women.
And these were skeletal remains that were found. So it took them a while to identify them. Once they did, were any of the people who were found on her list?
Yeah, about 10 of them.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, the only one, I believe, that was not on her list was Selania Edwards, and she was 15 years old. She was a young girl from Oklahoma who had run away and had been in Aurora, Colorado, and then at some point made her way down to Albuquerque. And she was African American. She was the only African American that was found. And she was not on the list. She wasn't from here, so they didn't really know to put her on the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 11 years down the road from finding these women on the West Mesa, more since they were killed, obviously. We talked about sort of the two people who were persons of interest. Where does the case stand now? You mentioned the task force, so
Yeah.
it's still open.
Yeah.
You spent your first episode sort of investigating, okay, is this a cold case?
Right.
The police would very much like to say that it's not.
Yeah. They say that it's not because they say they receive hundreds of tips a year. Yeah.
Have they shown you any of them?
No.
Okay.
No. And in fact, actually, everything that is connected in any way to this case is off limits to the media. So if you were to put in a FOIA request for anything connected to Joseph Blea or to Lorenzo Montoya, you would be told it's part of an active investigation. So you can't get anything. They say that they have received hundreds of tips each year. I don't know what those tips are. They've got about 3 detectives working it. They very much say that it's not a cold case.
Are they working this full time? Could you tell? Okay.
I don't know.
Difficult to.
Yeah. I mean, they are, I would say that this is one of many cases that they work.
Okay.
So, yes, they are full time, not full time on this case.
Okay. They think this is the work of one person? Or
They believe, yes.
one
serial
group
killer.
of. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we just have about a minute left. So some of the nuts and bolts of the podcast. First episode is what, like 10 minutes long?
Yeah, about 10 minutes.
Is that what we'll see with each?
No, the remaining episodes will be longer, 25 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
Include more interviews, do expansion really on certain aspects of the case, who the women were, and also something really to keep in mind, and this won't be the first time it's said, but it's very much believed by law enforcement and a number of other groups, organizations, and families that there are still more women out there. And so that's another thing that APD is actively looking at is if there are other women out there, where are they?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Tierna Unruh-Enos, thank you so much. The podcast is called The Mesa.
Yes.
And it's pretty widely available.
Yep. Anywhere where you get your podcasts.
All right. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.